An ABC News special report.
I'm Diane Macedo. We're coming on the air with breaking news about President Biden's son, Hunter Biden. ABC News is learning he has reached a deal with federal prosecutors to plead guilty to 2 minor tax crimes and admit to the facts of a gun charge. That's according to court papers filed Tuesday. The terms would likely keep him out of jail. The Department of Justice has been navigating a politically sensitive investigation involving Hunter Biden's business activities. The charges relate to his taxes and whether he lied about his drug use on a gun application form in 2018. This investigation was led by the U.S. Attorney in Delaware, appointed by former President Trump and kept on the job by President Biden and the Biden administration. The investigation does not involve President Biden. I want to get right to our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, with more on this. Pierre, you have that court filing in front of you, so walk us through the details of this deal.
Diana, well, the Justice Department and attorneys for Hunter Biden have reached an agreement that would end the long-running federal investigation into his personal and professional life, according to a new court filing just reviewed by ABC News. The plea deal calls for Biden to plead guilty to a pair of tax-related misdemeanors in exchange for probation, which will allow him to avoid serving time in prison if the deal is approved by a federal judge. The deal, which was negotiated by the U.S. Attorney for Delaware, David Weiss, a Trump appointee, also includes a pretrial diversion for 1 felony count related to Hunter Biden's illegal possession of a firearm, meaning that prosecutors would agree to drop that charge if Biden adheres to certain terms of a program such as no illegal drug use. Sources close to Hunter Biden believe that this will end the more than 5-year investigation that has dogged Hunter and his father, both men accused of corruption, as critics have focused on Hunter Biden's business deals in Ukraine and China.
And I want to bring in ABC's chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, on this. Mary, the president obviously has talked a lot about his close relationship with his son. Any reaction from the White House on this?
Yeah, well, no reaction yet, Diane, but we do know that over recent years and months, the White House, the Biden administration, has often tried to distance themselves from this investigation, not commenting on it, simply instead referring to the Justice Department. But I have to say, the president has been emphatic that he believes that his son, Hunter, did not break the law, that he did nothing wrong. We know that Joe Biden is extremely protective of his family, and he is also deeply proud of his son. I think it has pained the president to see his son but be used to launch political attacks against him for so many years now. And this president has also been very open about the very real struggle that his son has faced with addiction, which is, of course, at the center and linked to some of this investigation. He has said that Hunter, like so many American families, like so many in this country, has grappled with addiction on and off for much of his adult lifetime. And I think to see the president use what has been, for him, a struggle that now he's very proud of his son for having gotten through that, to see that be something that has been tried to use to launch political attacks against him has been very difficult, I think, for this president personally to watch. And Diane, we do have to say that while we are learning more about, what the president's son here, is being accused of and what has been reached here, the accusations that have been at the center of this, the accusations that Hunter has traded on family connections, that he seized on his business dealings to Ukraine, those are the things that Republicans have tried to use to harm Biden Sr., to harm the president. The issues that Republicans have seized on don't seem to be mentioned here.
I want to bring that point to ABC's chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams, joining us on the phone now. Dan, what does this deal tell us about this case, and what's not here, you think, that's notable? And what does it say, if anything, about those accusations about bribery, the laptop, Ukraine? What are we learning?
So I think you have to separate these really into 2 separate buckets here. One is this criminal investigation, which is initially what many Republicans were asking for. But once this investigation heated up, a separate issue arose as to what they're investigating, right? So let's talk about what this is. These are pretty technical violations. And I think it was always clear that Hunter Biden had not paid taxes for a couple of years. It was always clear that Hunter Biden had not been honest about drug addiction on a gun form. The question was, once you pay the money back, do you still get charged criminally? And on the gun form, do people really get charged just for that violation with nothing else? Those were the questions that they were grappling with. those questions have now been resolved in the context of this agreement. They've reached an agreement. They're going to recommend probation. If the judge signs off on it, then that case is over. The questions about Burisma and Hunter Biden getting money from China and Republican investigations of Hunter Biden and Joe Biden with regard to money coming from abroad, those are entirely separate issues and investigations. And those in the last, 6 months to a year have become much more important to Republican leaders than this criminal investigation.
Dan, we're also now getting in a statement from Hunter Biden's attorney saying in part, it's my understanding that the 5-year investigation into Hunter is resolved. Hunter will take responsibility for 2 instances of misdemeanor failure to file tax payments when due pursuant to a plea agreement, a firearm charge, which will be subject to a pre-child diversion agreement and will not be the subject of the plea agreement, will also be filed by the government. He says, I know Hunter believes it's important to take responsibility for these mistakes he made during a period of turmoil and addiction in his life. He looks forward to continuing his recovery and moving forward. I want to focus on that part saying, this 5-year investigation into Hunter is resolved. Does that mean all of it is resolved?
No. So from the Hunter Biden team, and probably most Democrats, in particular those close to Joe Biden, they're going to try to move forward and say, okay, we've addressed this. Hunter Biden has taken responsibility. It's time to move forward. I promise you're going to hear Republicans say, particularly in the Oversight Committee, this doesn't address. That's interesting and that's important, and they're going to criticize Hunter Biden, but they're also going to say, but this doesn't go to the heart of our investigation of the Biden family. So you're going to see 2 very different narratives here. One from the Biden family and those close to Joe Biden who are going to say he's accepted responsibility. This has been the 5-year investigation. It's time to move forward. And you're going to hear, Oversight Committee members and some other leading Republicans say that, no, that doesn't relate to our investigation of, where certain money came from. Because remember that part of the tax crime here was for not reporting money he was getting from overseas. And what some of the leading Republicans would say is, we still need to know a lot more about why that money was being paid, was there additional money being paid, et cetera.
I want to bring that point to our chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl. John, this is not only a legal issue, it's also a political one. And President Biden is not only current president, he's also running again for 2024. So what's the big picture impact here?
Well, first of all, a couple of points. President Biden has said point blank, and this is an exact quote, my son has done nothing wrong. Now we see his own Justice Department concluding an investigation that, in fact, the president's son did do things wrong. He committed crimes both in his failure to pay taxes in 2017 and 2018. By the way, he eventually paid the money he owed. It was some $2 million that he paid in 2021, significant amount of tax liability that he did not pay. And secondly, he has now pleaded guilty to a firearms charge. So that's one point. But for the Republicans, this is just the beginning. As Dan said, there's the question of the earnings in the first place, his business dealings, quite lucrative business dealings in both China and Ukraine, getting paid millions of dollars. Why was he getting this money? What did he do in return? In the case of Ukraine, this is a story I remember covering while Joe Biden was vice president, asking about it in the White House briefing room. Why was the president's son, the vice president's son at the time, getting paid millions of dollars from a Ukrainian energy company? Is it because he was an expert in energy? I mean, there's no evidence that he has any expertise whatsoever in that field. Or was he trading on his name, and what else was this energy company getting? And as far as the Republicans are concerned, this is just the beginning. It's not even a matter of just Hunter Biden. It's the Biden family. I mean, there's the questions about the president's brother, James Biden, and his dealings with China. So I think you'll see this as a a significant issue for Republicans on Capitol Hill going forward. They won't be satisfied in any way with this, and also a significant issue in the presidential campaign of 2024.
I want to bring in our senior investigative reporter, Aaron Katersky, on that, because, Aaron, the DOJ has been looking into all of those issues. So what do we know about their findings so far?
The findings only include these two relatively minor tax charges that Hunter Biden has now agreed to resolve, and one felony charge of making a false statement on his firearms application. And the charge is fairly simple, Diane. It says that on or about October 12th, 2018, Robert Hunter Biden knew that he was an unlawful user of a controlled substance and yet possessed a firearm anyway. Even though the Republicans will want to make a political case about China, Burisma, and other matters that have become almost conservative talking points on a campaign trail, a prosecutor that former President Trump appointed, that President Biden left in place, has now concluded none of those things seem to be chargeable. He has come up with misdemeanor tax charges for 2017 and 2018. Money that, as John Carl notes, Hunter Biden has already paid back, and this one felony charge involving lying about being on drugs while possessing a firearm.
Pierre, for Hunter Biden, why take this deal, and could we see more charges in this case in the future?
Well, Diane, a couple things. Number one, Hunter Biden's attorneys are making the argument, and they believe that the U.S. Attorney for Delaware, David Weiss, has looked at all these matters regarding China, Burisma, Ukraine, all of them, and could not come up with a chargeable case. That is their belief. That is what you will hear them putting forth in the coming days. That the Justice Department, again, a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney investigating for 5 years, could not bring any prosecutable offenses. That is the position that they're going to take. In terms of Hunter Biden, sources are saying that he felt it was important for his own recovery to take responsibility for the actions that he did regarding the taxes, not paying the taxes properly, and also on the gun charge. He had a belief, according to sources, that, look, under normal circumstances, people in similar situations don't face criminal prosecution, particularly on the tax matters. Their position is that those people typically pay the fine and the matter is handled with the IRS and is done with. On the gun charge, typically the federal government is not charging individual charges like this. It's usually some other accompanying violent crime or other crime. So in that regard, he's willing to allow that charge or agree to allow that charge to be filed against him, not entering a plea on that if he does not get into trouble over the course of the next few years, assuming a federal judge, and again, we have to emphasize, assuming a federal judge approves this deal, then that gun charge would later be dropped.
And I want to bring in ABC senior congressional correspondent Rachel Scott with some of the politics here. Rachel, no doubt there will be large reactions to this from Washington on both sides of the aisle. What are you watching for?
Well, look, Diane, make no mistake about it. House Republicans have made this a #1 priority since the first initial day of the new Congress. They have centered their entire push around investigating not only President Biden, but also his family, specifically Hunter Biden. They have held hearings on this around his business dealings, and so they will likely not be satisfied by this deal. And we will likely only see the outrage start to grow as this starts to ripple throughout Capitol Hill. Lawmakers are expected to come back here to Capitol Hill later this afternoon. And so while the federal investigation appears to be wrapping up here, you can only expect the outcry from House Republicans to only increase as they try to demand more answers to see how this all played out behind the scenes. And of course, all of this is taking place against the backdrop of the 2024 presidential election, which is already starting to heat up. And we have seen Republicans make the case that they believe that the justice system is being weaponized, Diane.
So, Aaron, what's next? What happens now?
At some point, Diane, Hunter Biden's going to have to appear in federal court in Wilmington, Delaware, and a judge is going to have to sign off on this tentative agreement to resolve these charges, putting him effectively on probation for a couple of years, but avoiding going to prison over these tax and this gun charge. So at some point, we will see Hunter Biden in all likelihood in court. But otherwise, as far as his team is concerned, this matter is largely resolved. The politics, of course, are yet to come. But from a legal matter, it appears that Hunter Biden is going to be on probation, meaning if he keeps his nose clean for the next couple of years, these charges are going to be resolved.
I want to bring in our political director, Rick Klein, for some final thoughts here. Rick, given we are entering an election year here, what do you think the impact is of this deal?
I'm hearing from Republicans already saying two-tier justice system. They're equating the charges brought against Donald Trump with the lack thereof and the lack of accountability that they see in the Hunter Biden case, even though the cases are entirely different. It is striking to me. There was a poll from Fox News a couple months ago, Diane, that had almost as many people thinking that Hunter Biden committed the crime as think Donald Trump committed the crime out of that Manhattan case. Now, of course, Hunter Biden is not the one running for office. His father is. There are still pretty extensive efforts by Republicans on Capitol Hill and on the campaign trail to try to tie Joe Biden to his son Hunter through the business deals. But because they aren't in here, that doesn't mean it's going to go away. I'd anticipate that the Republican candidates are going to continue to make Hunter Biden a centerpiece of the argument against Joe Biden. And keep in mind, Joe Biden also has some lower tier Democratic challengers, primary challengers, some of whom have at least hinted around the edges around Hunter Biden. I'm interested to see if any of them pick that up when so many Democrats are rallying behind the president. This has always been something of a political liability for President Biden.
John, how big of a challenge is this for President Biden now?
Well, it's an enormous challenge given the Trump cases because you have these highly consequential prosecutions of Donald Trump, an indictment in the documents case and a continued investigation in the January 6th case. And the challenge for the Biden Justice Department and for President Biden is to reassure particularly independents and Republicans in this country that there is not an unequal system of justice, that this is not a case of Donald Trump being prosecuted, being investigated because he is a political opponent of of Joe Biden, but because he has done something wrong. And so the test case will be, was this a legitimate, serious investigation of Hunter Biden? I think it is notable that you do have these guilty pleas here, 2 misdemeanors and a felony charge, a plea deal. It shows that the Biden Justice Department did bring a case against Hunter Biden. But the challenge here is Republicans are going to say that they didn't investigate the far more serious allegations sufficiently.
Terry, I want to bring in our senior national correspondent, Terry Moran, for just some final thoughts here. Terry, when you look back historically, how significant is this day?
It's big. Look, there have been a lot of relatives of presidents who have tried essentially to make money off of that relationship. That's what Hunter Biden stands accused of in the largest sense. What this indictment is are very specific violations of the law. A United States attorney for 5 years looked at this one individual. You don't want to be on the receiving end of that kind of scrutiny. And this is what it results. Misdemeanor tax charges and essentially a gun charge that is at the minor level. The question is the one that Pierre Thomas has asked, is this what the only thing that the U.S. attorney in Delaware, appointed by President Trump, was looking at? Over the course of 5 years, U.S. attorneys have a tendency to look wherever there might be wrongdoing, which then leaves the question for Republicans and Democrats and the country. Maybe there's a difference between what's legal and what's right. Hunter Biden may escape legal accountability, as might the president. The question before the country now is, was it wise for Joe Biden, when he was vice president, to be the Obama administration's point person on Ukraine when his son was buck-raking off his dad's name in that country? And those are the relationships also in China that the Republicans will continue to scrutinize and that will have political ramifications. But right now, these charges have got to be disappointing to Republicans who are looking for more out of Delaware.
So again, I just want to reiterate, ABC News is learning that Hunter Biden, the president's son, has reached an agreement to plead guilty to tax charges and a gun charge. The deal will likely involve no jail time, but this is, of course, a developing story. We will continue to watch it for you. Right now, we'll return you to your regular programming. For some, that's Good Morning America. And our coverage, of course, will continue on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. And we will have a full wrap-up on World News Tonight with David Muir. I'm Diane Macedo. Have a good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Tonight, finding the missing submarine, exploring the Titanic, racing against time, plus excessive heat warnings for millions as a possible tropical threat takes shape in the Atlantic. More Americans turn to the most watched program on television, World News Tonight with David Muir.
Get ready, America, every Friday.
The hottest trends, styles, and must-have. What's the right stuff
stuff to buy right now.
I really love that.
It's time to buy the right stuff.
Yes!
And save big time, too.
The right stuff.
Fridays on GMA. You're going to love it. This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers.
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital, destructive Cat 4 storm.
You're along I-5. Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
From America's #1 news source comes the all-new ABC News app. Breaking news, incredible video, faster, smarter, and it can customize to you and your interests. If you love being in the know, you're gonna love this. Experience what all the buzz is about. Experience the all-new ABC News app. Download it now.
When I got sent to Idaho to cover the murders of 4 college students, it was a story that didn't make any sense. 4 students stabbed to death in their beds while 2 roommates were home.
You gotta think to yourself, okay, who's the target and how many people would a man go through to get to his target?
I'm Kana Whitworth with ABC News. This is the story of savage murders, a determined small-town police force, and a scholar of crime. This is The King Road Killings, a new podcast from ABC Audio. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
This is where the newsmakers come first in the morning to be heard. America's #1 morning show.
How would your mom feel about your relationship with your brother now?
I can't imagine what it feels like to go from $20 billion to $100,000. Yeah. Are you worried about going to jail?
You write that you had low-grade depression. How'd you get out of that?
Wherever the story, ABC's Good Morning America is right there. We're honored ABC's 2020 winner of 3 Emmy Awards for Excellence. Thank you for making 2020 Friday night's most watched and most honored news magazine.
This has never been done before. Sunday, June 25th, across the country, see, experience some of the nation's greatest pride celebrations, all in one place as they happen live, right here on ABC News Live. Pride across America. Celebrate joy, love, freedom, and pride. Sunday, June 25th, starting at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Streaming on ABC News Live and stream on Hulu.
ABC News, America's #1 news source.
I'm Diane Macedo. We're following breaking news about President Biden's son, Hunter Biden. ABC News is learning he has reached a deal with federal prosecutors to plead guilty to 2 minor tax crimes and admit to the facts of a gun charge. That's according to court papers filed today. The terms would likely keep him out of jail. And those charges relate to his taxes and whether he lied about his drug use on a gun application form in 2018. I want to bring in our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, for more on this. Pierre, you're looking at the court filing right now. Walk us through some of the details here.
Well, again, Hunter Biden is agreeing to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax charges related to taxes filed or not filed properly in 2017 and 2018. On the gun charge, he is doing something called a pretrial diversion. No guilty plea or not guilty plea is being entered into that. That will be filed by the prosecutor as a charge against him. If a judge approves all these deals, if Hunter Biden does not get into any more legal trouble, namely and specifically does not get into any more illegal drug activity, then that particular charge would be dropped. The gun charge would be dropped. This ends, Diane, an investigation 5 years in the making. The attorneys for Hunter Biden are making the point that all these other long-standing investigations involving Ukraine and Burisma, that the U.S. Attorney's Office, a Trump-appointed U.S. Attorney, looked at those allegations. Thus far, could find no criminal prosecutions in connection with those, and that they believe, in their mind, this ends Hunter Biden's criminal legal woes from a federal level.
So I want to bring in ABC's investigative reporter, senior investigative reporter Aaron Katersky on that aspect. Aaron, so many people are going to be looking at this and asking about the laptop, the accusations of bribery, so much of what Pierre just touched on. So what does this deal do for that? Does that mean that's over? They didn't find anything?
After 5 years of investigation, Diane, it appears that the Trump-appointed U.S. attorney in Delaware, David Weiss, has not found any criminal liability with Hunter Biden's activities in China, in Ukraine, on the laptop, things that have become almost Republican talking points on the campaign trail. Instead, the charges involve two relatively minor tax crimes, failure to pay income taxes in 2017 and 2018, a time period in Hunter Biden's life when he admits that he was on drugs, and then the lying on a firearms application when he said he was not using a controlled substance in order to possess a firearm, and by his own admission we know that he was. And for the Biden family, who've always said they love their son and want to help him rebuild their life, this is over. Politically, for Republicans, undoubtedly they will still continue to harp on those things where they believe the Justice Department fell short, even though it's a Republican-appointed U.S. attorney that conducted the investigation.
And I want to bring in ABC's chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, with reaction from the White House. Mary, we've heard the president talk so much about his son. What's the White House saying now?
We have just gotten in a statement from the White House. They say the president and first lady love their son and support him as he continues to rebuild his life, adding, "We will have no further comment." This White House has tried very much to keep a distance from this investigation. The president has said, the White House has said repeatedly that the president, has not discussed this case at all with the attorney general. They have wanted to keep, a fair amount of space between the president and this investigation, while also coming out and supporting Hunter. The president has been emphatic that he believed that his son did nothing wrong. He has said as much that he doesn't believe Hunter broke the law. And the president, we know, is a devoted father. He has spoken often about how proud he is of Hunter for facing down such challenges. This is a man who for much of his adult life was in and out of rehab, dealing with his family, trying to fight this battle that, let's be honest, many families in this country battle as well. No one is immune to addiction, even if you are the son of the American president. But yet we have seen Hunter be used really as a political cudgel by Republicans and certainly by former President Trump. I think that is something that has pained very much Joe Biden. But what Aaron was saying there is so important, which is that when you look at what we are learning today, even though Republicans have accused Hunter of trading on his family connections, right? They have seized on his business dealings with Ukraine to try and politically harm his father. But all of those other issues that Republicans have seized on politically, none of those issues are being pursued per this agreement. And I suspect you will see this White House also note that the U.S. attorney who oversaw this investigation was someone who was appointed by the former president. So that is the argument that the White House, I think, is going to make. That those are, reasons why they, I think, will be very happy and very eager to try to turn the page on this. But as my colleagues have said, Republicans are going to try, I suspect, very hard to keep this in the public conversation. We are already seeing them argue that there was not, fair justice done here. And I suspect that you will certainly see the former president continue to try and seize upon this, because this isn't just about the son of the current sitting president. This is about the son of the frontrunner for the Democratic nomination and how his opponent, the Republican frontrunner, is likely to use this to continue to launch political attacks, Diane.
Let's bring that point to ABC senior congressional correspondent Rachel Scott, who's there on Capitol Hill. Rachel, what is the reaction so far, and does it offer any assurances to Republicans that this was a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney kept on the job by the Biden administration?
Diane, Republicans are not going to be satisfied by this, and we are already seeing reactions starting to pour in now. Just moments ago, former President Donald Trump weighed in for the first time, claiming that our system is, quote, broken. We're hearing from Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene, in which she's calling this pathetic. She's accusing the Justice Department of being weaponized, and that's something that will be echoed by a lot of Republicans here on Capitol Hill, especially in the House, who have made this the centerpiece since the beginning of the start of the new Congress. From day one, they have made it a priority to not only investigate President Biden, his administration, but also his son Hunter. They have held hearings on this. And so, no, they are going to push forward, as Mary just outlined there, especially as we get closer to 2024 and the presidential election, by claiming that the Justice Department is weaponized. They say they're not satisfied by this. More reaction coming in from Darrell Issa, a Republican congressman, calling this a cover-up. Another Congresswoman, Mary Miller, calling this a sweetheart deal. That very much echoes what we've heard from Trump's own super PAC, saying that the Justice Department is turning a blind eye. So, look, the bottom line here, even though you've heard Aaron, you've heard Mary lay out the facts of this, you've heard them describe how this was a Trump-appointed district attorney that was leading this case. For Republicans, they are going to make this argument that they believe that the justice system is being weaponized, and that is something that they have really leaned into, especially as we have seen the former president be indicted twice now, Diane.
I want to bring in our chief national correspondent, Terry Moran, as well, because, Terry, this is the end of the criminal investigation, but this is more than just that. So what's the rest of the impact here, and what's next?
If, in fact, this is the end of the criminal investigation to all those things that have been talked about, the business dealings that Hunter Biden had in Ukraine and in China, the laptop, if that's the end of the criminal investigation, then this is a political story, and still a big one, right? There is a difference between what's legal and what's right, and clearly Hunter Biden was involved in influence peddling in these countries. He had been a lobbyist and an investor and an executive at Amtrak in the United States. He was put on the board of directors of one of the largest energy companies, Burisma, in that part of the world. What were his qualifications? Many people suggest it was his last name. His father was vice president at the time, and while this prosecutor has found, after 5 years of looking for it, no evidence of any criminal wrongdoing, that's still fair comment and fair criticism for Republicans who are raising questions about why Joe Biden remained as the Obama administration's point person on Ukraine when his son was doing this. That's kind of a definitional conflict of interest. Not criminal, but part of the argument here. The problem Republicans have is that they're wild accusations. Former President Trump saying that Hunter Biden walked out of China with $1.5 billion. There are allegations that President Biden had $20 million from Hunter Biden's deal. He was asked about that in Japan. He said, where's the money? I don't have that kind of money. And the problem with the exaggerations of the Republicans and the combination that a 5-year investigation by a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney has not turned up any criminal allegations, it's going to be harder for them to make the fair comment and the fair argument that this is sleaze, not criminal, but sleazy.
So I want to take that point to Chief Washington correspondent Jonathan Karl. So, John, what do you think the impact is here for the 2024 race? How vulnerable is President Biden with these issues in the center of conversation again?
Well, I think these are critical issues that will be exploited by Republicans and will muddy the issue regarding former President Trump, because there'll be, what about the corruption of the Biden family? Now you have 2 guilty pleas. Now they are on misdemeanor charges. You have this diversion agreement on the firearms charge. But Republicans are going to look at all of the other stuff that you just talked about. And Terry's made the point that there's a difference between what's legal and what's right. And there are clearly issues here. There are legitimate issues here with, the Hunter Biden's business dealings in foreign countries that he had no apparent qualification for, yet made millions of dollars. What was going on? Was he trading on his family name? It seems like a very legitimate question to ask. And in terms of legality, when a prosecutor looks at a case like this, it's not just whether or not there was evidence of any laws being broken. It's a question of whether or not a case can be brought that can convince a jury. And you have prosecutorial discretion on this. This is, you think back to the Hillary Clinton email case and James Comey deciding not to prosecute that. But even as he made that decision, he outlined chapter and verse the things that he thought that Hillary Clinton did that were wrong, but made a decision that it would be a difficult case to bring before a jury and to win a conviction. So this isn't an exoneration by the Justice Department of Hunter Biden on the other charges. It's a decision that those other allegations did not rise to the level of something that could be prosecuted and could convince a jury to render a guilty verdict.
And let's bring in ABC News legal contributor Kim Whaley on that point. Kim, given the context that John just laid out, what are the broader legal implications here? And could Hunter Biden still face more charges in this case?
Well, it sounds like publicly from his lawyers that the agreement here is nothing else will come out of the 5-year investigation that reportedly included Ukraine, included China, all of these other conflicts. But I think it's significant that not only the U.S. attorney here from Dept for Delaware that was appointed by Donald Trump, but this is with the son of a sitting president, and all of the U.S. attorneys in the country, every federal prosecutor directly answers to Joe Biden, and that something like this went forward, I think, is significant for the functioning of the rule of law, because these are not significant charges in terms of, you know, easy wins for the government. That is, you know, it's a gun charge that I think jurors, particularly given the gun culture in this country, could feel sorry for him and say, listen, he was under the influence, you should not, or you had some kind of problems with drugs, you shouldn't hold him to this accountable for exercising his Second Amendment rights. That's one possible defense. And on the other, he paid back $2 million. So, you know, no harm, no foul. Excuse me. The fact that the prosecutors convinced him to plea, I think is significant that they exercise their prosecutors' discretion in that way. As far as these other issues, I just have to point out, you know, Jared Kushner, 6 months after he left office, Donald Trump got $2 billion from the Saudis for his investment firm that he created the day after Donald Trump left office. So if we see another sort of Biden-Trump matchup, I think there could be questions around the politics of their son's involvement in pay-for-play type communications for both sides of the aisle, both the Democratic and the potential Republican nominee.
So, Rick, looking at the political implications here, given the dynamics of the 2024 race, indictments against former President Trump also happening, is this good news or bad news for President Biden to be able to say, look, this case is done, here's what's happening with my son, you know, pleading guilty to these minor charges? Or is it bad news to still have these underlying accusations there and to have now a formal indictment coming in on this, or a plea deal, I should say?
It's never good news to have your son, who you have said repeatedly did nothing wrong, admit to federal crimes, as minor as they may be. It does give him a bit of a political answer and a quick answer to say, look, a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney looked into this. My son has admitted the wrongdoing. He's admitted his addiction, his substance abuse, and he's moving on with his life. It gives him an answer, but it really fuels the questions on the other side in a way that, frankly, I think benefits the political argument of former President Trump. He's been saying since the indictments out of Manhattan and then the indictment out of the Justice Department just a week or so ago that there's a two-tier justice system, that this justice system is broken. He is now slamming this as a sweetheart deal, essentially a traffic ticket is what he's equating this to. And keep in mind, the other Republicans have been basically parroting him on that point. And even if they're saying that Trump acted recklessly in connection with the classified documents, they're also saying that he shouldn't be charged this way, and that there's that the Justice Department went after him, weaponized the Justice Department. And if you want to look for equivalences with the timing of this, if nothing else, the fact that Hunter Biden is getting off with essentially a slap on the wrist, and President Trump is facing severe penalty and potential jail time, the cases are nothing alike. But in politics, the timing does matter, and I do think this is going to be a lot more grist for the political mill.
And investigative reporter Catherine Falders has been following all of these cases from the beginning. So, Catherine, I want to ask you, this is the DOJ's investigation that we're talking about here, but Congress has also been investigating Hunter Biden. So how does this impact that investigation?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the parallel investigations between DOJ and the congressional investigations, whether that relates to former President Trump or, in this case, Hunter Biden. Well, congressional Republicans have said that they are vowing to continue their investigating on this. Initial reaction from Republicans coming in, calling this deal just a slap on the wrist, saying the former President Trump has equated this to just a traffic ticket, for example. The chair of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, who has been investigating all of this since the beginning, including those foreign business deals, Diane, says that this is not going to impact their investigation going forward. You will continue to hear a lot from Republicans making some noise on this, but also likely requesting more documents, more information from the Department of Justice as to how this deal came together. But so far, it's just worth noting that they haven't turned up that much new information yet in these congressional committees during their investigation. We'll see if that changes moving forward.
So, Aaron, what's next in this case? What happens now?
Well, Diane, at some point, Hunter Biden is going to have to appear in federal court in Wilmington. A federal judge is going to have to sign off on this temporary or tentative deal to resolve these criminal matters. And that's the only thing that leaves this pending at the moment, because we've heard already from Hunter Biden's legal team that they consider this 5-year investigation to be resolved with only the guilty pleas to the 2 misdemeanor tax crimes and the 1 resolution admitting to the facts of a felony firearms charge and about lying about being on drugs while he was possessing a firearm. We've just, in the last couple of moments, Diane, received a statement from the U.S. Attorney David Weiss, which I'm pulling up here, and it simply announces what Hunter Biden has agreed to and what prosecutors have agreed to, and that's it. It's a rather bare bones statement that simply lays out the terms as we've been discussing, and it seems now the work of this Trump-appointed U.S. Attorney when it comes to Hunter Biden is now over.
And that statement says, in part, Hunter Biden is charged with 2 violations of failure to pay income tax and 1 violation of unlawful possession of a firearm by a person prohibited. If convicted, he faces a maximum penalty of 12 months in prison on each of the tax charges and a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison on the firearm charge. Actual sentences for federal crimes are typically less than the maximum penalties. A federal district judge will determine any sentence after taking into account the U.S. sentencing guidelines and other statutory factors. So, Aaron, quickly, what are you watching for as this case develops?
I think we're going to learn a date. That's going to be the most important thing, to see if a federal judge actually does agree to the terms that have been laid out by the prosecutor. And also we'll be watching to see how Hunter Biden responds over the next couple of years when he has to effectively be on probation and cannot commit another crime specifically related to taxes and firearms, but really has to stay out of legal trouble entirely. And that's a period of time over the next couple of years when his father is going to be running for the White House again. And so it's a critical time for the Biden family. It'll be interesting politically to see if the president brings his son with him on the campaign trail or tries to keep him outside the spotlight. But from a legal perspective, it's just a matter of getting him into court to formally get a judge to approve this.
All right, Aaron Katersky, thank you, and thanks to all our contributors and correspondents helping us cover this story. We'll be right back with the day's other top stories. Stay with us.
This is ABC News Live.
To crush a family.